Tyrese Haliburton is so good, he needs his own stat category and now has the Pacers on the doorstep of the NBA Finals. If LeBron James picks up his option, will it ruin the Lakers' chances at a Luka-Led title next season? And if Kevin Durant gets traded to Miami, is it likely to happen during the NBA draft? That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And I have two of the best with me, as always, from the Locked On Heat podcast. Sitting in for Matt Moore today, it's Wes Goldberg. Wes, Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle says they are going to need a new stat category to explain just what Tyrese Haliburton is doing in these playoffs. Triple-double, not good enough. What should they call the new stat?
They should just call it a Haliburton, right? Let's keep it simple. He's been that good that he deserves just to have his name on it. But what's cool about it is then you get into the abbreviations. It's like, oh yeah, so-and-so just put up a Hallie in last night's win. So you could kind of use all of this. But he deserves the stat to be named after him. Here's the list of players who have had 15 assists and 0 turnovers since Tyrese Haliburton entered the league. Haliburton's done it 11 times. Chris Paul has done it 4 times. Chris Paul is second at 4. Harden and Jokic have done it 1 time each. He deserves for the whole stat to just be named after him.
Incredible. All right, Wes wants to keep it simple. How about you, Haize, from the Locked On Bulls podcast? Is Haize, what's your Hallie stat called?
The most underrated, overrated. How about that?
the most underrated stat category. All right, I'll give you one more suggestion. How about a Reese piece? Reese piece.
That's nice.
Throw in a Reese piece. 15 assists, 0 stats. We'll call it a Reese piece. Haliburton, Reese piece, whatever you call it, it was amazing. The Pacers win. They go up 3-1, heading back to New York. Haliburton was incredible, as Wes just outlined there, but don't take our word for it. Here's the local expert, Tony East, with the numbers to know.
15 assists. That requires your teammates to make shots, and they did. The Pacers with 29 assists in this game. Haliburton had over half of them. The Knicks had 17 assists as a team. Tyrese Haliburton had 15 by himself. 4 steals. The Pacers had 11 as a team. He had a third of them. The Knicks had 7 total. And the one that always stands out with Tyrese Haliburton, 0, like the number on his jersey, turnovers in the game. Triple-double, no turnovers on this stage. Are you kidding me? That is as good as it possibly gets for Tyrese Haliburton. Against the Celtics last year with 26, 10, and 13 with no turnovers, but a triple-double in the playoffs last year against the Bucks, albeit not close to the scoring output. This is his 3rd triple-double. They've all been on huge stages. This one on the biggest stage yet. This one featuring, by far, his best ever game.
Okay, Wes, did Tony miss anything there? We've gone through the numbers. Kind of take me inside what happened last night on the court. How good was he? How much better has he been since the start of this season?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk numbers all we want, but the beauty in what Haliburton does is in what he doesn't do, right? That's what makes him so dominant. Haliburton does not turn the ball over, as Tony East covered there. He also doesn't dominate the ball, and he becomes a pillar of efficiency because of it. We already talked about the turnover stuff, but in terms of dominating the ball, where you see guys like Jalen Brunson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander so on the ball and so dominant, and it works for them and their teams, obviously. They're one of the last 4 teams standing. But Tyrese Haliburton's average seconds per touch is 4.15 seconds. You compare that to Jalen Brunson, whose average seconds per touch is 6.2 seconds per touch. Brunson leads the playoffs. Haliburton is behind Peyton Pritchard in terms of playoff time per touch. He doesn't need the ball to dominate games, because then you look at that, he's also creating 45 points for his team in terms of points created by assists and just his average points per game. That's right in the same ballpark as guys like Brunson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So Haliburton is doing the things that those guys are doing in terms of impact on offense while doing a lot less. He has been a pillar of efficiency. And again, the efficiency part of it is key. Haliburton is dominant not just because of what he provides in the box score stuff and these mind-blowing numbers, but also what he doesn't do. He doesn't turn the ball over, and he doesn't dominate the ball.
Haliburton is a master of just being effective, right? Like he's an effective basketball player. Despite some of the defensive limitations at times, like Haliburton always makes a positive impact. Even we've seen it like games where he scored like 12, 14 points or whatever. The Pacers have still been able to dominate because of the way that he ups that offensive ceiling so much. He does exactly what you want a point guard to do. And I know that we've come accustomed to seeing these point guards put up these huge scoring totals in the modern NBA. Haliburton doesn't have to do that to be effective. That's what's special about this Pacers team. But make no mistake about it. Also, at times when they need Haliburton to do that and take over games, at times he's able to do it. And it's just added so much versatility and has caused a team like the New York Knicks so much trouble in how they have to guard this Pacers team. And Haliburton really is the engine for that.
Yeah, Haize, off of that, that's what I had written down about Haliburton. He keeps the Pacers on the rails and maybe keeps his team on the rails more than any other player keeps their team on the rails, meaning he keeps them playing their pace, their game. When they started taking bad three-point shots, he was the one to get downhill, get to the paint, make plays. When they needed a steal, he got one on Jalen Brunson. He just keeps that team on the rails, and he may keep them in the NBA Finals. Here's a question, though, for looking ahead. Are we seeing peak Haliburton, Haize, or do you think there's some room for him to climb into first-team All-NBA discussions next season, maybe even MVP discussions next season? Is this as good as it's going to get for Haliburton, or will we start to have those conversations?
No, I think Haliburton can put up the numbers that can get him into that conversation, definitely for first-team All-NBA. I don't know about MVP numbers just because he's not. And not to say that everybody's an MVP is a selfish player, but I think Haliburton is so adaptable to what that team needs at any given time. I don't know if he'll ever get the consideration for MVP because it's easy to take for granted what Haliburton does well and overlook it sometimes. But he's that first team All-NBA, I definitely think it's in his future, especially after the playoffs that he's had.
Yeah, no question, right? I mean, with Haliburton, it might be more about the voters than it is about Haliburton himself. We've seen star players who play a little bit different. There's an adjustment period for the voting public, for the basketball watching people to kind of figure out, oh, this is what he's doing to be so effective. And it doesn't really look like some of the more classic ball dominant scoring numbers and stuff like that. It took us a while to figure out Steph Curry's impact. It took us a while to even figure out Nikola Jokic's impact, that's why we kept pulling out all those advanced stats with Jokic before we just started posting a triple-double every damn game. But with Haliburton, I think we're going to see a similar type of learning curve from league observers because what he does is a little bit harder to harness in a box score. And we know, people aren't watching Pacers games as much as they're watching the Lakers or the Warriors or the Knicks or some of these, or the Celtics and these other teams. But once I think we figure out how to contextualize it and tell this story around Haliburton, people will start to come up and start voting him potentially on their MVP ballots. Certainly, I think he's going to be in the realm for first team All-NBA. But a big part of that storytelling process is being in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years in a row, potentially the NBA Finals here in a couple of days. And the Pacers just continuing to win games because it's not just Haliburton. This Pacers team is awesome. They have one of the best starting fives in the NBA. And if they keep stacking up wins, we're going to be forced to reckon with what exactly this team is and why is it that they're so good. And you'll ultimately end up at Haliburton.
I love that Haize said we overlook some of the things that Haliburton does. I think we just turned him into the most underrated player in the NBA instead of the most overrated. I don't know. Matt Moore texted the group chat the following. It is a good thing I am not on the show tomorrow because Brunson would make me blow a gasket with this performance. Let's shift gears, talk about New York dropping this game. Haize, who should Knicks fans be blowing their gasket over today? Is it Jalen Brunson's quiet fourth quarter? Locked On Knicks saved most of their ire for Tibbs and Josh Hart because Josh Hart isn't Deuce McBride. We'll hear more from them later. But who should Knicks fans be most irate with this morning?
Tom Thibodeau. That's my opinion. I think it all comes. Tibbs is being outcoached at every step of this. Not to say that Jalen Brunson hasn't made mistakes and he's been a liability defensively. Not to say that there aren't other players that have disappointed, but I think it all comes down to schematics. Is Rick Carlisle is outcoaching the hell out of Tom Thibodeau, no matter what Tibbs does. That adjustment, putting Josh Hart on the bench and making that adjustment, cool. That was cute, great. But Rick Carlisle had to answer for it in the next game. So I think Rick Carlisle he's made a lot of coaches look bad over this stretch, and Tom Thibodeau is definitely the next face on his board.
To me, it's Josh Hart and it's Mitchell Robinson. Rick Carlisle is an awesome coach. He's going to outcoach Tom Thibodeau. Jalen Brunson is not good defensively. He's going to get targeted defensively. Karl-Anthony Towns is not good defensively. He's going to get targeted defensively. What makes the Knicks work is that the other pieces do what they're expected to do. And Josh Hart was brutal in last night's game. Defensively, getting backdoor cut endlessly. This was not a Josh Hart game. He had 4 or 5 turnovers in that game that really, I think all of them led to baskets on the other end for Indiana. He took it on the chin in the post-game press conference talking about how he has to be better. Okay, cool. You're down 3-1. It's a little too late to start talking about being better. You had to be better 48 minutes before that. His job is to be that glue guy, and instead he was a huge net negative. And then in the first quarter, when Tyrese Haliburton really started going with that pull-up jumper, he was targeting Mitchell Robinson in that drop coverage every single time. So maybe some blame is reserved for Tibbs for going to that starting lineup again, even though they won the previous game without those two guys, Robinson and Cat, on the court in the fourth quarter in the game previous. But Mitchell Robinson, he's on the court for his defense. He's got to be better. Josh Hart is on the court for all those little things that he does, and he wasn't doing those things in that game. Those guys have to be better. The pieces around those guys have to be better if the Knicks want to have the chance to win.
I think Knicks fans should be mad at Pat McAfee for goosing up that crowd and the New York celebrities that he used to goose up that crowd. I think that's who they should be most mad at. Kyle, let us know what you think on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Hit us up in the comments. Coming up, a lot of show left. We're going to hear from Locked On Knicks a little bit later in the show. But first, LeBron James likely to pick up his option. What does that mean for the Lakers' chances of getting a Luka-led title next season? And one person that you're looking at right now, if you're watching on YouTube, one person that you're looking at on the screen made a massive trade in the Locked On NBA mock draft. We'll find out who it is coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, it is playoff season, and DoorDash is turning big-time buckets into big-time bites. With Dash Pass, you can cash in when the stars show out. It's called They Swoosh and You Score. Anytime a player drops 50-plus points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece Crispy Tenders combo from Wingstop the next day. Just place a $20 or more order and use code WINGSTOP50 and you are eating good. Offer valid from noon to midnight next day. Terms apply. My go-to after a big game, I'm hitting up some wings. I'm getting a highlight replay playlist going, and this deal just makes it sweeter. Dash Pass means $0 delivery fees and perks like this and savings all season long. Don't miss out. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready the next time that someone drops a 50-piece. That's Dash Pass, your door to more flavor, more savings, and more ways to win. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Shams Charania, speaking with Pat McAfee, says LeBron James is likely to pick up his $52.6 million player option. Is that good for the Lakers' title prospects next season? That was the debate that set brother against brother on Locked On Lakers. Let's hear from one of the brothers, Andy Kamenetzky.
I don't think you can build the roster that you want around Luka. It's a math problem. I don't think you can do it. Combined with, especially if you are keeping Austin and Luka, LeBron, and Austin as a core, you're not going to be athletic, quick, powerful, and big enough, I think, to win in the NBA. You're not going to win a championship with the cost, with those three at the type of money that we're talking about. You're not going to be able to do it.
So I only played Andy's side of the argument, but they actually did argue with each other. Go check out Locked On Lakers to hear Brian's side. You may hear it voiced here by Wes or Haize in a moment. LeBron still has a month left to opt in or opt out, and there could be some massaging of that final number. It might not be 52.6, but for the sake of the discussion today, Wes, is it possible for the Lakers to build around Luka, get within sniffing distance of a title, with LeBron giving you, let's just say, last season's production in the $40 million to $52.6 million range?
I think so, because when LeBron is right and he's totally engaged, we've seen it. We've seen it within the last year. He could still be a top 10 to 12-ish type of player and certainly a huge needle mover in the NBA. And then when Luka is playing at the level that we know he's able to play at, that really changes things too. And frankly, we did not see that level of Luka during his time with the Lakers. And let's go back to when the Dallas Mavericks first traded for Kyrie Irving in the middle of the season, Luka and Kyrie did not mesh for that half season. It took them a while, and it took them a whole summer to kind of get together, communicate, and figure it out. And Luka gets a lot of credit for kind of stepping back and letting Kyrie cook a little bit more. And then what we saw the next year was a run to the NBA Finals. LeBron and Luka need time together. They're both really smart, intelligent players. They're going to figure it out. But to go back to the math problem that they were talking about on Locked On Lakers, that's a big part of it. If LeBron and Luka are making $100-ish million a year, I think that could be a top two that can compete for a championship. But what that means is you've got to get everything right on the rest of the roster. There are no room for mistakes. There isn't room for Gabe Vincent to be eating up $10 million when he's not performing to that level. There frankly might not be room to extend Austin Reeves, which is why he's sort of on the pseudo trade block potentially this summer. But if they nail the other things, I think this is a team that can compete for a championship, but it also requires LeBron and Luka figuring it out.
Yeah, and you want to give players a chance to figure out. LeBron didn't expect to be playing with Luka Doncic, nor did Luka expect to be out of Dallas, right? So I think you need to give coaching a chance to adapt. You need to give the players a chance to adapt. And I think that it still leaves you a lot of room for, if you construct the rest of the roster really well, that, yeah, you can still compete with those two guys. I think we even saw flashes of it last season. The question that I do have the same questions as the Kamenetzky brothers, as far as like the Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, LeBron, like that. They had a basically negative net rating up until like the last couple of games of the season, where they were able to push that into almost even. But there are some questions about the overall fit with those three players together. But the LeBron Luka part of it, I think they'll be perfectly fine there in the long term. They just have to be smart about what they do in every other spot of the roster.
All right, so the Lakers at home watching the postseason. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks, they're both going home. But the question is, will they stay here? Because they're both in a 3-1 hole. At home tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves with a chance to stay alive. But which team has the better odds of stretching their series out? Here's Locked On Knicks host Alex Wolf and Gavin Shaw on whether Knicks fans should break out the hopium or the copium.
13 is the number, unlucky 13, because that is the number of teams in NBA history that have come back from a 3-1 deficit to win a series.
I cannot comprehend a way they beat this team 3 times, continue to play the same lineups, and knowing Tom Thibodeau, he, when pushed to the brink, he will do a change of appeasement. And for him, that is like, let's just be as big as possible, right? Always goes with his gut, always goes with his instinct. And in some ways, that's been great for the Knicks. That's went out for the Knicks. This team takes on his personality. They're stubborn. They fight. Like all that is real and all that is valuable. But there is absolutely a ceiling with Tom Thibodeau as your head coach. They have just completely failed to maximize the fact that they have 2 of the 10 best offensive players in the league in Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. And because of it, I cannot see a way that they beat a Pacers team that is maybe not quite as talented, but is still spectacularly talented and is completely maximized by Rick Carlisle.
Okay, Locked On Knicks not providing much hope there. How about you, Haize? Both of these teams on the ropes, but which is more likely to become lucky number 14, the Knicks or the Wolves?
And forced to choose one, I don't think either one has a really great chance, but I would say the Knicks. They've been in closer in these games, I think, than a lot of people remember throughout these games. And I think there's a chance for the Knicks to kick it into another gear. I don't know if they can win, all 3 of the next games. I'm not giving anybody a chance against the OKC Thunder with the 3-1 lead. So by default, I'd have to pick the New York Knicks here.
I'll just take the Timberwolves then, since you already took the Knicks. But look, I don't think we've seen Minnesota's best game. And if you look at the history of teams that have come back down from 3-1, it's mostly been by singularly dominant performances and then weird kind of stuff happening on the other end. And I just think that this Pacers team has completely figured out how they want to play against the Knicks. And the Knicks are the rare team that are like actually extending their bench the further they go into the playoffs, because they're like, is Landry Shamet any good? And they're still trying to sort of figure things out. Whereas the Timberwolves, I think they know what they want to do. They've had a hard time doing it. But if Anthony Edwards can just emerge as like the best two-way player in this series, which again, I'm not counting on it, but there's more of a possibility there. And then plus maybe the Thunder, who are not a great 3-point shooting team. If they just go cold from 3 for a couple of games, then maybe the Timberwolves can work their way back into it. But yeah, I don't think we're getting lucky number 14 this year.
Listen, if the Minnesota Timberwolves have a better game than putting up 143 on the best defense in the NBA and winning by 42, that's going to be a hell of a game. I'm not arguing with you, Wes. I'm just saying that's going to be a hell of a game to watch. Which team needs to avoid a lengthy series most? So let's just take win-loss of the series out of it. When you think about the Pacers and the Thunder, Wes, who needs to just get this thing out of the way in 5 and get ready for the finals?
It's the Pacers, right? First of all, if you want to have any kind of advantage possible, if what you're going to do is be playing the Thunder in the finals, they're going to be huge underdogs, and rightfully so, against Oklahoma City, if that's what it is. So you need some sort of advantage, and if it's a rest advantage, then that presumably would help you.
Yeah, I think it got to be the Pacers. Like the Thunder, they can go 8 games, and I'd still give them the advantage over just about any team that they're going to face off against. The Pacers need as much rest as possible. Do not let the Knicks extend this series, even though I would love to see the drama of going to Game 7 in this series. Like, the Pacers have to take care of business. You got to get it done in Game 5. Get on so you can start game planning, so you can start getting your rest, because you're going to have a tall test in front of you against the OKC Thunder in the finals.
So I'll make an argument for the Thunder here, and the argument is they did sort of fool around in that series with the Nuggets and went to 7, and then they came into the beginning of that series with Minnesota, and they weren't throwing their best punch. It took them a little bit to get the engine revved up again, even though they had just played a couple of nights ago. So can they afford to do that against this Indiana team who is just super run and gun? They're going to come in with so much of that underdog mentality that I think the Thunder would be best suited here to just get some rest, make sure everybody is as healthy as possible for that game. All right, coming up on Locked On NBA, we've still got much more ahead, including a massive trade in our Locked On NBA mock draft. It involves Kevin Durant. Where's he going? We'll tell you next. Locked On NBA. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every single day. All week long, our Locked On NBA local hosts have been in the laboratory cooking up the best scenarios for their team in the Locked On NBA mock draft. Now, the full mock is not due to come out until mid-June, but we've been given exclusive details on some of the biggest surprises and trades that are going down, and we have, as guest host, one of the people that pulled off one of those huge deals in the 2025 Locked On NBA mock draft. Kevin Durant traded to the Miami Heat, courtesy of Locked On Heat. The Locked On Suns podcast, they get Andrew Wiggins, Duncan Robinson, Khalil Ware, a 2029 unprotected pick swap, and a 2031 unprotected first. So that's 2 first-round picks, 3 players. Wes, you first. Take us through Locked On Heat's reasoning for the deal. And then Haize, you tell me who won the deal.
The reasoning for the Heat is obvious. They've been in the bottom 10 in offensive rating for 3 straight seasons. You know who would help that? Kevin Durant, who was, despite the bad year that the Suns had, still 7th in the league in points per game, and obviously elite offensive player. And Miami has been missing, I would argue, for multiple regular seasons, even before the Jimmy Butler trade, an offensive superstar to carry that offense, a true number 1 option. And that's not really what Jimmy Butler was outside of some playoff runs during the regular season. And we've also seen the Heat have to go through the play-in tournament to make the playoffs in 3 straight seasons. They don't want to do that anymore. They need to be better offensively. Kevin Durant would obviously help. And now that Durant is potentially available again this summer, the Heat have circled the wagon on Kevin Durant 3 or 4 times. They're like the best team in the league in not trading for Kevin Durant because they've been tied to him so many times without actually landing him. I think they could potentially do it now. Yeah, Durant, he's 35, 36 years old, whatever. But there's no question that he would help this offense right away. And then after that, you're asking less of Tyler Hero. You're asking less of Bam Adebayo, and you can turn them into complementary offensive players while Durant is still your fulcrum on offense. And yeah, for that deal that we just laid out, I think it's a win-win for the Heat and for the Suns, but I'll see what Haize thinks about it.
The thing I don't like about this deal is giving up Khalil Ware, and I think Khalil Ware has tons of potential. And I don't know if getting Kevin Durant puts the Heat that much closer to actually winning a title where it's enough to give up a young piece. In my personal opinion, I have my doubts about that. I just think that the Heat are in a place where they need to be focused on going younger and developing and maybe taking their medicine for a little while. Personally, I understand the thought process behind the trade, but my question is that, it came out the other day, like, I don't know if you saw it or not, Wes, but apparently DeMar DeRozan is the Heat's backup plan. And just for the chaos of that, I would love to see that one.
We recorded a whole episode on the DeRozan thing over on Locked On Heat. And look, I'm not against it, especially if it doesn't cost you a whole lot. But yeah, it's spoken like a true Bulls observer. Yeah, might take that step back. Don't take that marginal step forward. What's the point? I do think that this team, given how wide open the East is next year, if you put Durant on this roster and you're only giving up Wiggins and Duncan Robinson and Khalil Ware, there's a potential for them to be a top 4 seed in the East. And then you combine Durant, what he could do in the playoffs, Eric Spoelstra, Bam Adebayo he's been in 2 NBA finals right now in his career. He's not interested in any step backs. I think this team has to, for better or worse, has to sort of push forward at this stage, because if you do kind of take that step back, then you might as well just trade Bam. You might as well start trading Tyler Hero. And we know this Heat team isn't in the business of doing those kinds of things. The Khalil Ware part, to your point, Haize, that was the sticking point in negotiations with Locked On Suns host Brendan Clean. That was the thing that we kept going back and forth on. But again, if the idea is East is pretty open next year, let's really make a run for it. I love Khalil Ware's potential. I think he's got a really high ceiling. The idea of him being an impactful player on a championship team next year, I think he's still probably a little too far away from doing that. And that's ultimately why you had to include him in the trade, because if we didn't include him, we weren't getting Durant.
Wes, if KD is moved to Miami, if anyone's moved to Miami, is the draft the likeliest timing in your mind?
I think so, because Durant's probably going to want to get this done early. I think Miami's probably going to want to get something like that done early. And if you do it right around the draft, and what's interesting about this is actually no picks in the draft were actually moved. So it actually makes no sense that we did this in the mock draft. But the negotiations started with the 20th overall pick. Phoenix wasn't that interested in it, so we kicked to a future pick. But Miami is able to trade up to 3 first-round draft picks starting on draft night. So that's why that's why we ended up kind of talking about it right around the mock draft.
All right, we'll have to wait till tomorrow to hear Matt Moore's take on this trade, as well as there's another massive trade that we'll talk about tomorrow from this. I'd venture to say it was even bigger than this KD trade. It might not result in as many wins, but it's still a bigger deal, I think. So wait for that tomorrow. But until then, Haize, KD in Miami, with the pieces that they have there, Hero, Bam, what does that do for them in terms of their Eastern Conference standing?
I mean, it definitely puts them. There'll definitely be a top 4 or 5 seed, and the East is wide open. I don't know what it does for them competing against Cleveland. In my opinion, I just think that they are so sound as far as on both sides of the ball. I know that their season ended earlier than many were expecting, but I still think that's going to be a team that's going to be really good. But with not knowing what's going on with Boston, we don't know if Giannis is going to be in the Eastern Conference. We don't know a lot like what's going to happen next year. Like, it could be the time for the Heat to make their move and try to go on another one of their magical runs to finals. I don't still see them beating any of the teams in the Western Conference with that roster. So, there it goes.
Wes, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Right. They would have to make more moves. The Heat don't only have a problem at the top of the roster. They have a problem at the middle of the roster too. I think that series against Cleveland showed how little depth they actually have. So if you do get Kevin Durant and you do it early enough in the draft, you're hoping that maybe you get some veteran free agents that might be ring chasing / interested in living in Miami for a season or two. That would be the idea. But the Heat don't think about things in terms of, does this trade make us the best team on paper? They look at it as, does this trade open up a window and give us a puncher's chance? Because that's all we need, because we've shown that we can make the finals even when the odds are against us. We just need an opportunity. And over the last couple of years, they haven't had that.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On NBA. Thanks so much to Wes for sitting in for Matt. Matt will be back tomorrow. And thank you to Haize for your expertise every single day. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts. That includes on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also catch Wes Goldberg each week on Locked On NBA Game Night. That's every game, every night, including tonight's Game 5 between the Wolves and the Thunder. They will be recapping it. Enjoy our beautiful game tonight. Be kind to each other. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA.